Hey, hey, hey! Welcome everyone to our Sunday night webinar of Single Life. So excited. Oh, Jennifer and Jonathan. Hey, how are you, Jonathan? And then everybody, I've got Jim here with me, Jim Turner. He's in the Sugar Hill State here in Georgia. So he's joining with me tonight. And we're going to be talking a little bit from just a lot of different things. I'm really excited about this topic tonight. So if you're new to joining us, we have been talking about different things in related to relationships and that type of thing the last little bit. We have been talking about the 5 different things that like the prophets and leaders of the church have advised that we all need to come to some sort of compromise, agreement, or whatever on before we get married. And those 5 things, just in review if you're new, are religion, parenting, money, recreation, and intimacy. And so we've been talking about these, and we've been taking a night just to talk about some of these, and we've already covered religion and parenting and recreation. And tonight we're talking about money, and next week is going to be intimacy. So you might want to spread the word. That's going to be a fun topic. So anyway, we are going to be talking tonight about money. And money can be, so many different things. And the reason that it's so important that we talk about these 5 things before is so that because a lot of marriages fail because of one of these 5 things, sometimes a couple of things combined, but generally people aren't talking about these beforehand. Well, you've got to have discussions about these. You've got to have vulnerable, in-depth discussions on these and come to terms and agreements and whatever. Do not think that it'll all work out. Love will get us through anything. That's what we thought in our 20s, and where are we now? Okay, so it's really important that now when we're going into, especially those of us that are divorced, going into remarriages, that we take this approach of having these conversations. And some of them might be hard to talk about. There's appropriate times for each one of these. The times to talk about intimacy is not within the first week of your relationship, right? It's generally after you're seriously dating, when you're engaged, that kind of thing is when you're going to get more in depth into that and have that vulnerable conversation. But for beginning stages, you talk about other things. So some of these topics will come later, maybe drip them a little bit throughout the relationship. You can do that. But to get to the nitty-gritty, to get to those vulnerable, this is the way it really is, kind of conversations, that's when you're more involved with them. I hope that makes sense. All right. Got a couple other people to bring in. And then we're going to, I'm going to start off with this thought. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but there's a lot of feedback, I don't know, I hear from men a lot, that they feel that women are looking for men with money, and that most women only want a man with money. I've heard this a lot. And I'm not saying that there are not women out there that are looking for men with money, because I know there are. But I do know that the majority of women that I talk to are looking for security. They're not really looking for money. And that is a different thing. And money can be different for anybody, right? But when you really think about it, and you're thinking security, right? You're thinking bills are going to get paid. We're not going to lose our house. We're not going to lose our car. We're going to make sure that the lights stay on and the water keeps running and food's on the table and whatever, right? Because a lot of us are juggling that single. And for some of us, it's a struggle. For others, you may find it, comes easy. But we're all at different levels of that. Does that make sense? Anybody have anything else to say to that on the whole security topic? If you do, let me know. But I love this because I've taught my kids this, especially my sons. As you guys know, I have 4 sons, and 2 of them are now married. And I've taught them before they got married that the person you choose to marry will either make or break you emotionally, spiritually, financially, or whatever, right? The person that you choose to spend the most special part of your life with, the biggest decision you're going to make, is someone that you really need to find out what their spending habits are, what their lifestyle is, what their expectations are about different aspects of life, especially in regards to money. Because the person you choose to marry will either make or break you financially. Now, with that said, divorce is expensive. I've never experienced the death of a spouse, so I don't know what all is entailed with that. And maybe if you guys have experienced that, you can fill me in on that one. And I know that those that have never been married generally are just, on your own from the start. But I do know, though, that divorce is expensive on both sides. And generally speaking, it's been my experience in that most of the men have to pay out way more than the women do to their spouse or their ex-spouse, former spouse, whatever you want to call it. So they're paying alimony and child support and extra whatever. And then, and then also there's a lot of single moms that are more living in the poverty range. There's some single dads living that way too. So because it's expensive, divorce is not cheap to go through. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're looking for somebody, because I talk to a lot of women, and it does seem that a lot of women still have that same expectation of a man that they did when they were in their 20s, of thinking that, I'm going to find a man and he's going to basically rescue me from this situation and we're going to live happily ever after. And some women still have that concept, and it is very misguided. So, and I know that that's a strong opinion that I have, and you may feel otherwise, and I'd love to hear from you if you do. But just know that bottom line is, it's very important to accept that person where they're at, wherever they're at, because you two together could make things work in an amazing way, because you've been struggling by yourselves. And then like if you come together, it could be so different. That makes sense? Okay. So, and then when it comes to, let me go back to when I teach my kids, the person you marry will either make or break you, because they're either going to build you up or they're going to tear you down. There's no middle ground generally. It's not like they're going to keep you at a stagnant level. Remember that there's change always happening. Whether we may feel like we're doing the same thing on every day, it's really changing one way or another. All right. So so let's talk for a minute. Expectations. Let's talk spending habits. Let's talk income. Let's talk debt. Most of us have incurred some debt at some point. I know there are some people that want to bring in the conversation of prenups. There's so many different topics we could talk about here when it comes to money. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So Paula, one of the big things for me is, like you were saying, there are a lot of men that are not as well off as they'd like to be, and they hesitate to think that a woman would be interested in them because they don't have their financial house in order. And I think that there are some women out there, myself included, that's not a big deal to me, because right. I'm pretty independent, and to get, like you said a minute ago, together we can work that out. But I think one of the things I would like to focus on is, like, how when we are dating, we spend our money because it's going to be ours at some point if things go well. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that that's important to talk about in your relationship. You know, what our spending habits are going to be like later. And, you know, is this something that we are excited about, or is this something that's going to, you know, eventually break the bank, or what have you? I don't know. That's just kind of where my head is. And I'd like to hear other people's opinions on that. What's kind of safe, what's not, what works, what doesn't.
Amen. I love you. I love you. I love you. That I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was something I wanted to talk about tonight and didn't make it to my notes. So I'm glad you were looking out for me there, Jennifer. Definitely a great topic to talk about. So let's talk about money and dating. Let's start there. Money and dating. What are your expectations when you go out on a date? Men or women? Speak up. What do you expect? How much money do you expect people to spend? Who do you expect to pay? Let's talk about that for a minute.
I personally like to share in that expense because I feel bad. I don't care how much money a man has. I feel bad just kind of taking, because I have been independent for so long. I want to feel more like a partner. I don't want to feel like I'm taking from anybody.
Okay.
Well, it's also, is it not also about keeping the boundaries? There's a certain degree of control that you have if you're paying your own way in the beginning. Then you're setting some boundaries. You're indicating you're not rushing into anything. You're willing to take the time, and the time that you take is going to cost some money. But by paying my own way, it's the old. No, I'm not beholden. You know.
I love it. Thank you. Other thoughts?
Hey, Paula, to go back real quick on the whole security and money thing. One thing about, can you hear me?
I barely.
One thing I've learned, can you hear me better now? Can you hear me?
One thing you've learned?
One thing I learned about women do not go back in lifestyle. If a woman's used to flying to Europe every year and she cannot maintain that lifestyle, then it's just, you can't afford the lifestyle. That's just, I mean, I'd love to hear the women, but women generally do not like to go back in lifestyle. So when we talk about security and finances, there is a minimum requirement. Whatever lifestyle they're currently living is the one they want to maintain. Then once they go up, or they're used to going up, then that's the new lifestyle they want to maintain, and that's what they want. You can look at pictures on a dating website for a woman and determine whether or not you can afford her lifestyle or not. And if you can't afford it, then there's probably, you're not going to be compatible financially. That's the first thing. I mean, like to hear from the women, but that's what I've learned, is whether or not I can afford her or not.
Oh, wow. Great point.
Jason, I love you so much, dude. I love you so much. I'm going to not even respectfully disagree. I think if you're with the right person and you have a great connection with them, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you'll figure it out. I do believe that there are some women that feel that way, but I think to clump us all into one big group is kind of offensive, just because I mean, I know you're not trying to be offensive. I'm just saying, but there's some of us that are not that gal.
I also question that men's position with the same question. I question that men wouldn't want to take a step back any more than you would want. You would hope that your situation together would be enhanced by being together.
Mm-hmm.
You would hope that you wouldn't be joining yourself with someone who's in worse shape than you are, or that is in as bad a shape as you are, without understanding that that's going to be recompensed through the quality of the relationship. But I question whether no, I don't question. I take disagreement with the fact that women may be perceived that way and yet men not. I'm not buying that.
Well, I'm not saying men aren't. I'm just saying that I doubt there's a person here that would want to marry somebody who's unemployable.
Right. And Sylvia, just keep in mind when Jason is talking, he's generally speaking for the men in relation to what he perceives in women. And then that's when the women come in and we go, okay, so I'm loving that you're adding to that. Heidi, honey, you don't have to raise your hand, just speak up.
I didn't feel like I could get in there. Everybody's talking so much tonight. I've never raised my hand before. I felt like I had to tonight.
Okay, you need to be a little louder though. I can't hear you very well.
Okay. Is that better?
That's a little better.
Okay. So, I wanted to say to all the guys out there that I'm poor, so I'm in poverty, so we can only go up. I do like to be treated. I want you to pay for the meal. But no, seriously, like this is such good stuff because since I've never been married, I don't know how this works. And so, I have this list of why someone wouldn't want to be with me. And so on that list of the other things is my poverty level and my student loan debt for school. So like I worry about that. I worry about what, like, that's going to be a negative for me instead of it being about who I am and what I can bring to the table. That it's going to be about that, like my debt for student loans for school. And I think Jason had mentioned at one time, he had mentioned something about bank accounts and how you have, like, he had his, and then she had hers, and then they had ours. And I really like that. I wonder if that works very well. Can we elaborate on that some?
That works extremely well. And there's a general authority, she's an apostle, I'm not going to say who he is, who actually does that. The idea being is that money is probably the biggest thing that couples fight about. And men can be very critical of what a woman spends money on, whether it's nails, shoes, things that we don't have an appreciation for or feel like there's a need for. And so what happens is that you're scrolling through your bank account and you're looking at your balance sheet and you're looking at all the purchases made and you're wondering, why did you spend $50 on nails, or why do you spend $100 in shoes? And so you start picking at the other person's values, and it creates angst between the couples. And so what my ex-wife and I did, and it worked very well, was what we decided was that we had our single account that we paid all our bills out of. And that way, we all knew what was going on. We all monitored that, and we all agreed on the purchases there. Then we set aside money, individual money. It was the same amount for her and the same amount for me. And that money was disposable money that we could choose buy whatever we want to. And the agreement was that the other person would not be critical of those purchases. And by not, there's an old saying, out of sight, out of mind. I didn't keep track of that balance. I didn't, if she spent it all in one day and she bought bubble gum, that was her money to spend. And we created boundaries between each other so that we didn't make a issue and our argument out of that. And that's the idea behind it. Because people absolutely fight over money. I just give you a little background. I spent 10 plus years in financing, and I started out with a debt collection. And first of all, you would be surprised how many people go into collections, whether it's those who have little money or those who have lots of money. Famous people too. I can't say names or anything, but once I went from there, I went into lending, where I became an underwriter and a loan officer. And that was surprising as well, as far as people's finances. But the biggest thing that people have problems with managing is money. Absolutely money. It's incredible how I've had a lady come to me, beg me to cash her check, because if I didn't, her lights would be switched off. But she had returned so many checks, I couldn't approve it. I had to put a waiting or hold on those checks. But yes, money is the big thing, and that kind of created a protection to help preserve sanity in the house, when we didn't have to argue about money and we agreed upon everything. So
I love that idea, and I love the thought of finding a solution to doing that, because I do know how much people fight about money, and I've seen family members in relationships over money issues, and statistically, money is not an issue after the combined income it reaches about $80,000. It's generally speaking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but if people are making less than $80,000, there's usually more fights over money. Over $80,000, there are less. I'm not saying there are none, but there are less fights over money, because they have a little more money, a little bit more of a cushion, a little bit more of an extra to do or to work with. And that has been the statistics that I have found, that I've read, that I've studied, and that generally people consider themselves struggling with money or having more money issues if they make less than 80,000. Did you find that as well, Jason, or was it something different?
money, it doesn't matter if the more money you have, the more money you spend. And we had a couple come in, and they were poor as dirt. And then they came in, they applied for a loan. The loan was approved with conditions. A month later, they won the lotto, millionaires overnight. Within 2 years, they were committing fraud. They ran through the money, and they had created lifestyles for themselves that they loved and they didn't want to abandon. And so one day they came in with a fraudulent check, and we told them, we can't accept it. We know this check is fraudulent. It's not real. And they went ahead and went somewhere else and deposited it. And so they started committing fraud. So even if you have lots and lots of money, if you do not manage it very well or don't know how to manage it, it will ultimately destroy you. I had a couple come in, they applied for a car loan. They were in their 60s, and they made $120,000 collectively a year. Perfect credit, we grade the credits, we have A, B, C, D, and then anything below D is you could call F paper. They were A+, they had perfect credit. However, they had one problem. They had $80,000 in credit card debt. So they may not have been arguing money at the time, but they were creating literally a future problem for themselves that they would never by themselves be able to get out of. Because $80,000 is a lot of money to on credit card debt when you're talking about 10% plus interest. And so I ended up turning them down for a loan because we called it unsecured debt, where they had more. Their unsecured debt was over, I think we wanted to cap it at 40%. And it was just, and I knew eventually the only way that they would escape that credit card debt was to file bankruptcy. And bankruptcy is a very, very difficult thing to go through. If you haven't been through bankruptcy or you know about it, it's public. It's anybody can find out. You have to go to court and to a bankruptcy court. And if I remember correctly, I believe there's a room of people that you have to meet with the trustee about. And so there's notices given. It follows on your credit report for 10 years. And so that's a tough thing to go back and say, listen, we didn't, things happen. And here we're having to kind of air our not dirty laundry, but we're having to air our financial laundry with everybody. But the more money you have, the more money you can spend. In fact, I'm going to bore y'all with all this. We have what we call a jumbo loan. And what a jumbo loan means, any mortgage loan over $250,000 has a higher interest rate. And the reason why it has a higher interest rate is because it's considered a more volatile loan. That means that there's a greater chance of that person's defaulting on the loan, because the people who earn that type of money, this is 10 years ago, $250,000 or more, if they lose their job, the chances of them actually finding another job that duplicates that income is very slim, because there's just not a lot of jobs out there.
Okay.
So I'm going to bore you, but no, just because you have more money. And the other thing is to give you an idea, cost of living has gone up, salaries have gone down. In the 1970s, if you were a high school graduate, you made $30,000 a year. Today,
okay, I'm going to reel you back in here just a minute. We're going a little bit way further out than I wanted to on the topic.
Sorry, I'll stop.
Loving your information. Maybe we can save that for another time when we get more into finance stuff, okay? But I wanted to keep it closer into relationships. And you know, like Jennifer brought up the topic of money and dating, and then also I love the points you're bringing out. I'm loving this information. Okay, it's great information. We just have like, you know, little less time, like 45 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we're talking about the money and relationships. Okay. But I actually really like the idea that you said about having an account, and then having separate accounts for your spending money and no judgment. I'm loving that. Because one thing that's really hard for us as women is having to ask for money. I hate that. It's like a little girl going to her father and saying, "Can I have some money for?" And I hate that. Okay, and I think most women do, because it's really kind of degrading. Because even for women that are stay-at-home moms, it's like the hardest job to do. But it just makes us feel like we're even contributing less when we have to do that. So I love that idea, and I hope that people will implement that. Let's go back though to Jennifer's point, and where we start out in relationships of dating and money, right? So I hope it's okay if I hope it's okay with Jim anyway. But so Jim and I are dating, right? And we had a little bit of a conversation about money and dating, right? And I'm like, you know, we live closer, so that's kind of awesome. It's not like a long distance thing, but I wanna, but money became, you know, I didn't want money to be like a big issue with dating, and so I actually was like, if you're okay with it, let me create a list, and I did. I created a list of just things that we could do that either wouldn't cost money or would cost very little money. And that's been kind of fun, right? Yeah. It has really just kind of worked out for us to be able to spend more time together, but not spending a lot of money. Without spending a lot of money. Because the most important thing is the time that we spend together and building our relationship, and not necessarily the money that we spent. And I'm also more of a practical person. I don't really like spending a lot of money if we don't have to, which I think he kind of likes. So it was like one of those things where, but I love the point though that Jennifer brought up, and that you do have to think about it one day becoming our money. So even if you've got a lot of money and you can spend it, why do that? You know, why blow, you know, $50 to $100 on dinner for a night if you don't have to? You know, very often kind of thing, if you're going to be seeing each other more often. So let's chat about that for a minute, of being able to talk about that and talk about the money that's involved with dating, or the time, or the different factors or different expectations even of that. Anybody have anything to add on that one?
So I'll throw in a few thoughts.
Okay.
I like your idea of cheap dates, but I also don't mind spending money, especially, you know, if there's like a sporting event or a concert I want to go to, I don't mind spending the extra to bring somebody that is going to enhance that experience and make it fun for me, and they're going to have a good time too. You know, same thing for a fancy dinner. Like, that's fine every once in a while, because you know what? I've got 3 kids and it costs a lot of money to take them out to dinner. Whereas if I'm just taking one person out to dinner, it's actually cheaper. So I can go somewhere a little pricier and it costs the same amount as what I'm used to taking my boys out for. And so I don't mind spending more on something that we're both going to enjoy, you know, especially if you are dating somebody and it's not like a first date. And I think also the other part of it is, what's your motivation behind that? Like, if you're just trying to impress somebody, like, ooh, look, I can take you all these places, that's not really the right thing, because it's going to lead to problems later on. But if you're like, hey, I like this artist and you like their music too, hey, let's go to this concert and it'll be fun, then that's different, you know? So that's why I think as far as the dating piece of it.
Love it.
Is it not also that if, as you observe those patterns over a period of time in dating that one person, there's an insight that goes with that. You can begin to gain an insight into the spontaneity with which they will spend a lot of money or spend a little, or the process they go through as to weighing out the cost effectiveness, so to speak. If they're purchasing things or if they're taking you somewhere, or it's an indicator perhaps of other stuff going on in the background, and maybe we should pay attention to, which can be good. It can also be clues to explore that avenue a little more and see if you can understand what motivates them to be spending a lot of money when they really don't need to. Or I just think there's some clues as to what the psychology behind it is, and that can be insightful.
There's something to think about. That's awesome. Thanks, Sylvia.
Paul, I have a question for Brian. Brian, is it offensive to you if the person that you're dating wants to help? Like if you have spent all this money on, a nice date or whatever, if she decides she wants to help with sodas or I don't know, just something, is that offensive to you? Or because you feel like that's your job, or is it okay for you to have help?
No, I don't take offense to it. It's just, it depends on the relationship, but no, obviously if they offer, then that's great,
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that question because generally speaking, it is traditional, right, that the men pay. And I know for those of us Matthew Hussey fans, he teaches us to offer, to help, so that then it's not like a thing where we are just expecting them to just take care of us all the time, right? But I love how Jennifer calls it a partnership. And when we can show that we're willing to contribute to this partnership, then it does become a much better journey rather than just let me take all the time. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Hey, Paula.
Uh-huh.
I really like the idea of the list that you just shared, like you making this list for y'all to do that doesn't cost a lot of money. Can you share some examples of some of the stuff that y'all
Sure.
have done or that's on the list?
Yeah, so actually one of them we did yesterday. We went to Emma Falls here close by, well, about an hour, I think, from where I live. And it's like a waterfall, beautiful waterfall. I think it cost, I don't know, how much did it cost?
$5.
$5 to get in. I made a picnic, and we went and we hiked the falls. We went up, came back down. He brought a cooler of water. I brought all the food, and we got to have a picnic there. And then we went and walked downtown Dahlonega. It's just like a cute little downtown area, cute little shops, antiques and potteries and glass blowing and lots of fun things to go and look at and explore and ooh and ah over. He showed me like a bear on a tree and the story behind that. And the only thing it cost us was $5, and then the food. And that was it. And we got to spend the day doing that. And then we just came back and watched a movie that we already had, or that I already had on DVD or borrowed it. So that was a very low cost, but very fun, very memorable date that we had. Another idea that I had was reading a book together. Like we've got this Saints book that's like super thick, right? We can read. It's about church, the history behind some of the church in the early days, and that's something you can do together. We can do family history together. We decided we were going to have a weekly temple night. So we're going to go to the temple on Friday nights. And, again, doesn't cost a lot of money, but it can be something that's very relationship building. Can you think of any of the other things that are on that list? anyway, so just ideas like that. There's always, watching a movie at home versus watching a movie out is always a less expensive thing to do. Cooking dinner together, baking together. There's lots of different things you can do that are just lower in cost that are still fun to do, very memory building, and you create experiences. The recreation comes in a lot on that one because there's a lot of low cost things you can do recreation wise. If there's a community center that you have in town that you can go and play basketball, go play tennis, go to a pool. So yeah, just lots of different things like that. But the hiking, the nature walks, the state parks generally have a lot of different things to do, and that helps a lot. And just being able to get outdoors, because sometimes we're stuck inside a lot, and that helps being able to get out a little bit. That's about it, right? I think I covered most of it. That help, Heidi? I hope.
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem. All right. So in dating, when the focus isn't on the money, but it's on the relationship building and the journey of building that relationship and getting to know each other and that type of thing, it helps a lot. So that then is an issue. Now, if you are in a long distance relationship, that money becomes more of an issue because then you've got a lot of travel expenses and you've got other issues involved with that one. So I would recommend more FaceTime. There's online games you can do. There's other things you can do that way.
Thank you, Paula, very much. By the way, the last time when you suggested, I think it was Brian Kellogg that suggested doing the Skyping thing for the long distance. Mm-hmm. It's working really well. I really appreciate. Should have been a no-brainer, but wasn't. The most obvious thing. Very helpful. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Well, that's what we do. We're getting ideas from each other, and we all learn from each other's experiences and perspectives, right? So, yeah, and it's not like we've all been doing this forever, so it's not like we're all experts at everything. We're just kind of learning as we go. So I'm grateful that works for you, and that really helps. Keep me posted on that one. All right. So, any other thing we want to cover on dating and money? All right. So when it comes to the talk about money, or when you start talking about money, like I was saying earlier, it's not like you're going to be dating for, 6 months and all of a sudden you're going to have a talk about money, right? That should be kind of dripped a little bit in there, like we had a conversation about dating and money and how we can do some dates that don't cost a lot of money, so that you can still spend time together and still have a good time. And a lot of times that helps to have that conversation earlier on than later, so then you're both on the same page. And then when it comes to having a conversation about budgeting or spending habits, I love how, I don't remember who was it that talked about, maybe that was Sylvia, talked about how you can watch them and how they spend money throughout, or maybe even Jason, throughout your dating experience. You can watch kind of their spending habits and what they like to spend money on, what they don't, that kind of thing. And maybe you could even have a conversation about that. And also a budget, living within a budget. I love how Jason brought up, the different bank account ideas. That was a great idea. And that's something that you can talk about if that works for both of you guys. You want to divulge income at some point. I would not at all recommend you do that early on, but maybe later on, because that's not something, you want to make sure that you're seriously dating somebody and maybe even engaged or whatever, and having this conversation about income and how you're going to work out a budget and how you're going to work out all the nitty-gritty. Because as much as we all may want to romanticize the relationship or getting married or planning a wedding or whatever, remember that you're looking for someone to share that day in and day out living, the paying the bills and buying the food, and you're going to be sharing a bathroom and doing laundry together and doing whatever, right? So that's that person that you're going to choose to do all that with, and you want to make sure that you're both on the same page with how you manage the money, and that you've come to some sort of a compromise, or maybe even goals in reaching a certain income level, or something that you're going to do together. Like if you are both in a situation where there's not a lot of money, how you're both going to work together to build each other up and out of, and to a certain point of level. You want to talk about debt. There's a lot of single adults that have debt. It is something that I don't know how many people are avoiding that, or if you are, how you're doing it, because I'd kind of like to know. I've been out of work a few times in my 12 years of being single, and trying to raise 5 kids, and I accumulated a little bit of debt. I didn't accumulate that great amount that Jason was talking about, thank goodness, but it's more than what I would like to be dealing with. But just know, again, coming up with a plan to work through that is the best thing to do. And then there are those that do have money, that do want some form of a prenuptial agreement. And I do know that for some men and also for some women, that is important. I've talked to both. I have friends that either have money, or not either, just have money from wherever the source came from, and they want to do some type of a prenup on that one. And I know I had a friend get married in June, and his prenup was just basically going to state that, once we're married, that his wife could have whatever is accumulated when he passes on. But if she were to leave him, then she would only get so much. That makes sense? So prenup, there were some prenups that will say that. Some prenups just say, hey, whatever I had before, you get nothing. Whatever we have together, we split, kind of thing. So I don't know a lot about prenups. Don't expect that I'm gonna, be involved with one. But either way, I would love to hear your thoughts on those. I do know I can't remember his name. There was a basketball player that did some personal development things for teens that I showed high school students, I think last year. And he was talking about how there were a lot of people that had advised him to have a prenuptial agreement when he married his wife, because he made a lot of money, one of those big time sports stars. And he told them he wasn't going to do that. And they were just really advising against that, and really advising him to get the prenup and whatever. And he basically said, I am marrying this woman because I love her, and I trust that that is her purpose in marrying me. And we're going to make this work. I don't expect to go through a divorce, nor does she. But if we do, I trust that she's not going to go mean on me and try to take everything I've got. And again, if she does, then she's going to feel like that, she deserved that, or that, for whatever reason. But it was very interesting to me, his perspective of the money that he had, and knowing that that woman could wipe him out, but he trusted her and loved her that much to just say, you know what, I'm not doing that. So I'm not saying that anything against people that do. I'm just letting you know that there are different perspectives in that. All right, I've talked a lot. I'm going to open it up to you guys. Share your thoughts. Tell me what you're thinking.
I actually, big mouth over here. I actually had a prenup with my second husband, and he ended up figuring out a way to still get me for everything. So if the prenup is the way you want to go, make sure that you really protect yourself, because you can think you're protecting yourself. I thought I was protecting myself and my kids, and unfortunately we lost everything. So if that's the route that you want to go, make sure you do it right. I, moving forward, would not do that, but that's my opinion.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, anyone else?
A little bit different perspective, maybe. My personal funding, my personal assets, I expect to contribute that fully into a marriage. As a business owner, I have partners, and I do need to protect myself, and not even myself, protect them from a possible divorce where, a big forfeiture in a divorce situation could bankrupt the company. I'm not a proponent of prenups. I don't want one, but I do think it's necessary, depending on your circumstances, to protect other people that are within your sphere of influence.
Great point. Yep, definitely. Yeah, if you're a business owner and you got partners, yeah, you want to look out for them. Great point. But I love also Jennifer's input in that you do need to make sure you are fully covered, that there is no loophole that they can work around or whatever. So, yeah, so awesome. Great points, guys. Thanks. All right. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I think for me, it would more depend on the situation. I mean, if we're on relatively even financial footing, then I definitely wouldn't need one. But, if it's significantly different, then I think I would want to, kind of protect myself some there, from that risk.
Okay, can you embellish on that a little bit? What you mean by that? Give me an example.
If I'm marrying somebody and they have a lot of debt and not very many assets, I've worked really hard in my life to be mostly debt free, and I wouldn't want to jeopardize that,
So do you mean like you would do a prenup? Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Yeah, definitely. You do want to, and that also can go back to spending habits, or it could just go back to life situations. So yeah, awesome. Great point. You guys are awesome.
So I don't have a lot of experience with all of this, but I will say that originally when I hear the term prenup, I feel offended. Like I would feel offended that someone would think that they would have to do that, with me, that there's might be a fear there, that I would take advantage of them or try to take something that's not mine. So I feel that way, but hearing everybody talk, it is helping me to make space for that possibility that someone might want to do that. And I mean, I get it. I get it at the same time, but I also have some feelings of being offended too. Does that make sense?
Sure. So guys, what are your thoughts on dating somebody that is poor, that is in a poverty situation? Because quite honestly, a lot of single moms are. What are your thoughts?
One of the things, speaking financially, that I know people do to kind of prevent somebody from having access to money, I'm not giving any legal advice or financial advice, is to get a trust. When you set up a trust, you literally dictate how that money is to be spent, as long as that money or that property exists. I don't, as far as legalities to it, I don't know anybody who can challenge a trust or change the motivation or the origin of trust. So that's just something to consider. As far as financial situations, there, you mentioned the basketball player or the professional athlete. I remember a Beatle who had the same type of mentality. where he married his supermodel wife without a prenup, and she took half of everything. So
Okay.
it's there's an old saying, buyer beware. No offense to Heidi, but and it sounds so cold, but the reality is that 50% of all marriages do end in divorce. Second marriages do have a higher chance of those couples being divorced. So the reality is absolutely there. And it's not so much me trying to protect my own interest. It's so much things that, as Brian said, I've got rental properties, I've got a house, I've got, other things that I want to be able to pass on to my kids. And so I'm protecting their interests, not so much as I'm protecting my own interests. Also,
Okay. So, but the question is, Jason, would you date somebody that doesn't have a lot of money?
Yes, I would. I don't really care about the financial situation. I'm more interested in the value of the individual. So education, personality, chemistry, religion, than I am about the finances. So.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much.
I have a question, Paula. I've never been married, but I about 15 years ago, I actually had a friend that moved in with me, and she was going through a divorce. And about that same time with my job, I was also having to deal with like a group, and then we had like I wouldn't say a vendor, but another group that was doing stuff for us. And something that I found then, and I'm with you, Heidi, because it's like, oh, it takes all the romance out of it. It's all this doubt and pessimism. But sometimes, and I'll use the example, the work example. We had a kind of a little bit of a dispute with this group, and what we did is we went back to the statement of work and the contract, and we actually looked at it, and we saw, okay, here we go, here it is, and this is how it is. Because I think what I saw with this roommate is she pretty much she landed on my couch and had to stay for a while, but she what she thought was fair wasn't what he thought was fair. And when you're dealing with a lot of emotions and frustration, if it's something in writing, you can parse it out. But I'm like you, Heidi, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to come across, because I'm older and I haven't married. And so I've accumulated some stuff. But do I do that? That's, it kind of feels rude. And I don't know.
What about it feels rude, Margie?
I just, I guess it takes the romance out of it. Like, it's like, okay, hey, I expect you that we're going to get divorced one day.
Okay,
and that's
reality check, honey. Marriage isn't always romantic.
No, I'm talking about the romance beforehand. When you're going into it.
Right. Even some days even some days beforehand, it's not always romantic.
I've been engaged before, so I
know. I'm just telling you.
I've had a long-term relationship, so I kind of get some of that.
I know. I'm just saying, though, that you have to have that conversation. You have to. Like, you've got to push through and have that heart-to-heart, be vulnerable with them. Here's where I'm at with that.
About the prenup?
If you can't have that conversation beforehand, it's not going to matter after.
I'm talking about a prenup. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about just a prenup.
That's
so you agree with having a prenup?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What you're saying?
You want to have a prenup. You need to have a prenup if that's important to you.
I don't know that it's important to me. I just don't know if I want it or not.
Okay. Well, then, you know what?
That's why you need to talk about it.
That's why you need to talk about it, right? That's why you need to talk about it. And if it is important to you, then definitely. I mean, I know of men and women, it's important to them. They're going to do a prenup. It's not rude. It's just money. It's what they've accumulated beforehand. And whatever it is, if it's something that means something to you, Jason's going to have a prenup. Brian's okay with doing a prenup. Why is it that as a woman, you feel like it's rude? That makes sense to you, Margie? That's what I'm.
Maybe I shouldn't have used that word. I think that's a trigger, but
sorry, I'm not trying to be a trigger. I'm just trying to be like, why does that feel weird to you? You know? It
puts in that doubt. It goes back to that basketball player. So it's like saying, I doubt we're going to last. And that's the part that I think why some people don't want to do that. It's because it signals, okay, this is the out. I mean, my philosophy is whatever I had before, whatever you had before, we'll part, and whatever's in the middle, we split in half. That would be, to me, logical.
Hey,
But
Margie, I agree with you 100%, but none of us are married or none of us are dating, and look where we're at. Imagine when you step into a relationship, it gets even more personal. It's one of those things where, every time we get behind the wheel of a car, we wear a seatbelt, not because we hope to get in a crash, but just in case we do get in a crash. And so it's absolutely not to be offensive to you, but I was married for 19 years. The person I married from day one was not the person I divorced on year 19.
and that's where I saw with my friend when she was going through it, because of the emotion was just off. Or
go watch a bunch of people where somebody has passed away with lots of money.
Oh, trust me, I've been there.
And it is a living nightmare. And it's not, and I hope that I never have to use a prenup, but it's there because it's a precautionary protection for myself and for my kids. Because if you get to that point where you're getting a divorce, then the loyalty has gone away.
Right.
And so that's what you're protecting against. Not the person you're dating or wanting to marry now. It's the person or the situation that may come. And to be honest with you, it could hurt you. It could absolutely turn tables on you, where the person who wants a divorce says, listen, I know you don't have anything, but I'm going to take it all just because I'm in a bad mood today. And so
I love how Jason brought up that the person he married at the beginning of those 19 years was different than the person she was after 19 years. People change. We all do. For good or better, we all change. Okay, Jennifer, you had a comment?
Actually, Jonathan has a comment.
Oh, yeah, Jonathan, hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So the thing about marriage and partnership is being equally yoked. I mean, that's ultimately the idea, the understanding, the concept you want to get to, in perfect correlation to how we're yoked with Christ. If we're not equally yoked, you just go around in a circle because one person's stronger or weaker. And in the bigger picture, when it comes to finances, for me, to see a prenup would cause future tensions or possible resentments, because then you would, if you're both equally yoked and you're going into something, what if one person says, wait a second, whose money are we spending now? My money or your money? I mean, you had more money before me, or I had more money before you. What are we doing here? Is this part of who we are now? It doesn't seem like it allows for an equal yoking together between two people. Now that's contingent upon the idea that two people are equally committed to the gospel and living the gospel and doing everything to become perfected in Christ. So,
okay.
So
awesome.
To his point, it's not a question of whether or not, whose money is being spent. I've created assets that I want to preserve for myself and for my children. Assets that were created way before if I do remarry a second time, that person enters into that relationship. And I have a vested interest in protecting those assets for my children, because that's what they were, that's why I created them for. I have seen too many people turn rotten with money who grew up together. Money makes people crazy. And I don't see anything wrong with it. They do it in businesses. Everybody, if there's no contract, it never happened. I've seen it time and time again. It has to be written, and you do those things for, the inevitable protection. And as far as even the Savior's apostle Judas, it is my opinion that he went on the dark side because of money, and so money, you try to take those. For me, it's protecting the relationship, and the sacredness by not making that an issue to begin with, as far as who gets what. That's why we have wills, and we have designations of how things are to be set aside. So.
And I think in some ways we can bring this all back to the money mindset. What is your mindset toward money? How important is money in your life? And for some people, they're battling scarcity or poverty mindset, we call it. And others may have more of an abundance mindset on it. It depends on your whole mindset toward money, what you value, what you don't value. as far as whatever assets you go, when you are working business like Pat or Jason or even Brian, I don't know what you have, but when you have other assets, rental homes, business, whatever, you do want to look out for that. You do want to protect that. And, you know, if that's something that you feel like is important to you. I know my brother has some rental properties, and so when he was going through his breakup, he had a live-in girlfriend. When they were going through their breakup and dividing up different things, because they had a child together, they had a mediator that would actually help them in figuring out, where they would go with whatever. My brother made the comment, he said, if we had a mediator from the beginning that would help us work out the money thing, we may not be breaking up. But it was a big deal to him about money because she would spend money different than he would have. And it became a huge issue. She grew up the daughter of a very prominent doctor here in America, here in Atlanta. And so she had the nannies and the maids and the whatever, and she still wanted to live like that. Well, we didn't grow up that way. We grew up in very small town Alabama and on the poverty spectrum. And so my brother, who had, built this general contracting business and has done really well with it, but was very protective of his money and what he was making and how it was being spent and whatever, because it took him a lot to build up his business from nothing. It's not like he inherited it. He had to build it up from nothing. And so she's coming in and she's spending all this money on whatever. And he paid off her car once and then paid off her credit cards, and she, maxed them all out again, and he paid them off again, and she maxed them up again. And he's like, I'm not doing it anymore, because to her, spending money was different. They did not have that conversation in the beginning. They did not have a mediator in the beginning. And it would have helped them so much if they had it. There were other aspects of their life that they may not have agreed on, but money became the deciding factor for their breakup. Just as Jason pointed out before, money ruins a lot of marriages. When there's that division over where the value is placed with money in your life, and what you're going to do with the money, what your plans are with the money, what your expectations are. Are you on the same page with how you spend the money? Are you on the same page how you save the money? That's why I love the idea of having that account, make sure all the bills are paid, and the extra, you spend however, and then nobody says anything. You're good. So then there's empowerment to that on both sides. Nobody has to feel guilty about asking for money or whatever. So that's a great point. Jason, I'm really glad you brought that up and pointed that out. Any other ideas, any other thoughts you'd like to share tonight?
I just want to say that I'm glad you brought up it's going to depend on your mindset, because I've not thought about any of this stuff before. I've thought about the things that might keep someone from being attracted to me or want to be in a relationship with me, but I've never thought about how would it work. And I've never thought about a prenup. I've never thought about anything. I totally have the poverty mindset. And because of this exposure to these thoughts in this conversation, I got some work to do. I got some stuff I need to really think about and try to wrap my brain around some of this. And because I don't want to go into it offended, I don't want to go into it being just not having enough knowledge about the whole topic of why someone would want to do it. Now, I'm poor. I'm very poor. I've been in poverty my entire life, starting, from childhood, from the age of whatever I can remember. But I am going somewhere. I'm not going to stay here. I'm getting educated. I'm working on my master's. I've got a job interview Thursday for another different job. So I'm going to go somewhere. I just don't want anybody to hold it against me that this is where I came from and that's going to be a part of my personality. That's going to be a part of my mindset. Now, I am aware that that's a part of my mindset, and I'm not above or against breaking those barriers down and rewiring that. But I'm definitely going to need someone who will still give me a chance, like still give me an opportunity despite where I came from, because this is going to be a challenge for me. I mean, even when, let's say I do get this job, it'll be the most money I've ever made in my life. And I'm still scared that I'm not going to have enough. I'm still like, oh my, okay, how can I, you know, because everybody keeps saying the more money you make, the more you start to spend, and then you don't and I'm like, wait a minute, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? So anyway, I'm just grateful that I'm being made aware of stuff like this. Like, I just never thought about any of this. And so it's really opening my mind and bringing some points out, and just, you know, that I can think on and that I can contemplate and learn more about. But yeah, thank you, Paula.
No problem, honey. Love ya. All right, so there's a couple of things I'd like to recommend that you do. The church actually puts out, I think they still put it out anyway, there's a pamphlet called One for the Money. I don't know if you guys remember, it's been out for like forever. So at least as long as I've been an adult, I've seen that pamphlet. I would recommend that. There's also the self-reliance course that you could take that also teaches a lot about personal finance. And then also there are books you can read about money mindset. And I think there's one actually called The Money Mindset. But there's also one about the divine law of compensation and how the Lord wants us to be successful. He doesn't want us to feel like we've got to, you know, live in poverty to be godlike. That's not what the Lord meant. The Lord, you know, in the scriptures it said the love of money is the root of all evil. What I have learned is that who we are inherently is magnified with money. So it doesn't really change who we are inherently. We just get to be more of whoever we are. So if you are one that is more controlling with money, or more, how shall I put this, more of a miser, more of a, whatever, you know, you want your thumb more on it, you'll continue to do that with money. If you're more of a giving person and more of a selfless, if you're more of a, here, let me help you out with this, let me help you out with that, you'll still do that with money. It just magnifies who you are. So being successful, some people are afraid of that because they feel like it's going to change who they are. Or living in poverty, people feel like, oh, well, maybe I'm not blessed. Maybe the Lord doesn't love me. Maybe whatever, right? There's a mindset that comes with that. Whether you're in poverty or whether you are living in abundance, either way, there's mindsets with either one. And so that is one that I really feel like that if we can come to terms and you're on equal playing ground, if you will, in your relationship when it comes to money, then it will not be an issue. Because if you're not, then it will be an issue. If you're not on the same ground, if you can't come to a compromise, if you can't work out a budget, and you both honor that, and you both honor whatever system you're coming up with, then it will be an issue. Otherwise, then it's a non-issue because you've already worked it out beforehand. Having those conversations is tough. It's not easy to talk about money beforehand. That's a very vulnerable topic for people.
I wanted to say something to Heidi. Heidi, I grew up poor too, and I've worked really hard, and I can think of somebody I remember being interested in him just because he kind of came from a poor background and worked hard to get there, because it was very similar to me. Whereas I can remember dating somebody and they said, well, why don't you just put that on credit? And I was like, well, I just saved up the money and I could do cash. So that's part of the mindset too. So, but there's other ways of a mindset. So don't feel less than just because you came from a poor place, because some people might actually admire you for what you've done. And I know that I've seen your Facebook. I know that you've done some things that I admire, that you've overcome a lot of challenges. And so they'll see that in you, I think, if they're worth it.
Love it. Couldn't have said it better, Margie. Thank you so much for doing that, for sharing those thoughts. Anyone else have anything else to share? Anything else you want to talk about?
I just wanted to, kind of speak to those points. As far as dating somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, for me, it's less about their situation and how much money they have, as it is about how they manage their money and the reason that they're in that situation. Somebody like your brother was with, that would be a huge red flag for me. Somebody who likes to spend a lot of money and run through it, that would not be very compatible with me, but I dated somebody who's still a very dear friend, and she lives with her parents, with her kids, but it's because it's not from any fault of her own. Her ex just up and left, and has not paid child support in the last several years, is like $60,000 behind. If she had that money, she'd be living on her own, if she had the money she was supposed to have. And she has a regular professional job and does what she can, but because of that circumstance, she's living with her parents, and that's not a problem for me, because she has a job, and she knows how to manage money and work with it and everything, and she's doing what she can. That sort of thing doesn't bother me. So it's not about the amount, it's about what you do with it, and where you're heading. Like Heidi was mentioning, she's furthering her education, she's looking to get a new job, things like that. Those are real positive signs.
I love that. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, because it's not, when men are going to look more at, I think most men will just do what Brian is saying and what Jason's saying. And I think it's just like that. So thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. Sometimes we let money define who we are and define our value. And I know that after reading like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, I understand that a little bit more with men and women. Like, men generally find their value more in what they do and the money they make and their job and whatever, right? And women find their value more in their relationships and their homes and all, and how that all plays out. And that's very general. I know that. But still, though, money doesn't define our value. Like, it doesn't create our value. It's just one that helps us live a certain way, a lifestyle, or pays the bills, or whatever your attitude is toward it, whatever your goals are in making the money, or in earning money, or whatever, however you want to call it. So I think for a lot of people that is what I hear a lot in that mindset, is that they've let it determine their value. And money doesn't determine our own personal value. That money, we have a value on things because of what that money can do, but it's not our own personal value. That makes sense, I hope. Okay, any other thoughts? Comments? All right. Well, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with me.
I have a comment.
Go right ahead. Make that comment.
I am so happy and excited for you and Jim. Y'all are adorable.
Thank you.
Okay. And Jennifer, too.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
Love you, too. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you. All right, you guys are awesome. I appreciate you sharing your Sunday evening with me. Next week, fun topic. We're going to be talking about intimacy. We're going to be talking about, different, stages of it in our dating relationship, and then also having conversations about it and the things that are important to talk about. So more next week. Join me then, and I will talk to you later. Love you. See you later.